Payments are the most important factor in a credit score. In my other video on payment history, I referred to payments as the heartbeat of any credit score. In this video, I'll present a detailed picture of what consumers can do to manipulate their credit score by using their own timely payments to get as much out of the payment history factor as possible. I'm Cap, and welcome to Screaming Lincoln's Consumer Credit Series. Everyone knows the payment history factor contributes 35% towards their credit score. For anyone with no existing score, this translates to 297.5 total points. However, most consumers have an existing credit score, so this calculation is shifted to account for the initial 300 points you get just for having a score to begin with. For consumers that already have scores, this means the payment history factor contributes 192.5 points, given that the 300 points is the new zero. I'm focusing on the classic FICO scoring system here, and won't look at other models that have different scoring ranges, which might weigh the payment history factor differently. Now that we've established the total points allowed, let's see what actions consumers can take to ensure they're getting the most from their payment history. The short answer is that payment history must be addressed on two fronts. First, you want lots of payments being reported. Second, you want to not have any derogatory marks. Let's delve deeper into these two aspects by providing examples of how they would apply. Here's a 30-year-old person with a credit history of 10 years. They've had a single credit card open during those 10 years and even had a car loan for 5 years, which was paid off a couple years ago and closed out. The unfortunate thing about this person's history is that they don't use the card that often. It's simply used only in emergencies. This means their credit card is reporting payments just 1 to 3 times per year, given that emergencies don't happen every month. Their score is okay at just over 700, which is in line with the average U.S. credit score. Let's go over a few scenarios to elaborate on what would help their score and what would lower their score when it comes to payment history. First, take note of the number of payments in this person's history. There's a 60-month stretch where a payment was reported every month for their car loan, but beyond that, the credit card didn't help as much as it should because it was hardly used. This is the problem with people that don't use their cards. They think because it's still open that they're building their account history factor, which is good enough for them. Because there is no balance, they also feel that the credit utilization factor is excellent because it's at 0. This mentality gets many people in trouble because cards can be closed when they're not used. Back in the 90s, it was okay to use your cards only in an emergency or for online purchases only, given how scared people were to input their card information back then. As technology has improved around credit, this approach is becoming outdated, and many consumers risk account closure depending on how aggressive the lender is in limiting their exposure to risk by having too many unused credit lines on their books. Sadly, in our example here, the number of payments is quite low relative to the length of their credit history. Now let's change it up a little. Let's add a few more cards opened over the years along with more consistent use across each one of them during this same 10-year span. As you can see, the number of payments increases dramatically, which translates to higher scores. Lenders love seeing lots of timely payments. Think of payments as bricks in a wall they're building to protect them from other negative credit items like derogatory marks. By having lots of payments, their wall can be much higher, which can fortify their credit position during tougher economic times like we have in 2020, or in the event a derogatory mark appears in their credit history. I can't stress the importance of having reported payments enough. It's not sufficient to simply open lots of credit cards and sit back while each month passes and they don't get used. Sure, the account history builds and the utilization is kept low, but many lenders don't like to see that, nor does it maximize your ability to improve a credit score when it comes to the payment history factor. Let's get back to our example. This time we'll cut their account history in half. We'll add more cards to their history. Each of these cards will be used every month, which means their payments will be reported every month. Notice how the number of payments balloons much higher. This often translates to a higher score for borrowers, despite having a much shorter credit history. That's the strength of payment history and fortifying credit. There are other factors, like making sure the lender reports a low balance to ensure the credit utilization factor isn't negatively impacted, or applying for too many accounts, which our person in this example had to do to get that many cards in that short of time. These other factors can be mitigated with the right strategy. I have videos going over each of these other factors and what can be done to minimize their impact in lowering a score. With the right approach, getting an 800 credit score isn't that difficult. Now that I've laid the case for having more payments reported, let's move on to derogatory marks. Missed payments, collection accounts, judgments, and liens are examples. Missed payments are the most common derogatory mark. They come in different sizes and are dictated by the lender's account of the borrower's payments. Credit algorithms look at three key things around derogatory marks like missed payments. First, how recent is it? Second, how severe was it? And lastly, how many of them are there? Because of this multifactored approach in analyzing missed payments, the impact on scores isn't a simple linear formula where one missed payment translates to a 100-point drop. When it comes to derogatory marks like missed payments, the first two key things matter most. In our example from earlier, let's go back to the last scenario and add just a single 30-day missed payment that recently occurred. The impact is most severe in this instance because there are no prior missed payments, which means the history was clean up to this point. But if we were to add a few more missed payments throughout the history, the impact on the score won't have the same linear math applied because credit algorithms, like FICO, take the prior existence of missed payments into account and reduce the impact of these subsequent missed payments by reducing the impact on the score with each occurrence. This is why I stress how it's not the end of the world for people with troubled credit like bankruptcies or lots of missed payments. Because to mitigate the damage for someone with troubled credit, two things are required: time and payments. Let's go back to our example and pretend one of the accounts turned into a collection account. Many people in this instance would simply throw their hands up in the air and say,
"Well, my score is crap and no one is going to lend me money. So why bother continuing making payments on other cards? Let the bankruptcy proceedings begin."
The problem with this approach is they're eliminating any chance of rebuilding their credit in the short term. Short term in this case would be 2 to 5 years, because after a couple of years of timely payments and not having any missed payments on the remaining accounts, our borrower is showing credit responsibility and is making a valid case for the collection account as an isolated occurrence. Our person's case could be solidified further by having more payments appear in their credit history. This means using all of their cards every month, preferably for low amount transactions, and paying them. This way, the payments are reported, which rebuild their payment history factor, and their credit utilization remains low. Remember the importance of fortifying a credit history with more payments. Those payments are the bricks in the credit wall, which protect a credit score better than having a lot less of them or giving up on building one altogether. There are other factors beyond credit to consider, like income stability and other life events, which can hamper the ability to make payments, which is a topic beyond the scope of this video. But if the money is there, then continuing to make payments can improve a score without waiting the usual 7 lengthy years To have derogatory marks like missed payments fall off a credit report, often after just a couple years. Will the score rebound to normal within a couple years? No, it won't. But the impact of a single or few derogatory marks can be mitigated with the right approach. More payments are pivotal in establishing trust with lenders. In order to get more payments, more credit accounts are required. It's a weird logic driving the credit system here in the US, but it's not going away. Adapting your credit strategy to make your credit situation more appealing is vital when it comes to increasing your score around the payment history factor. It's not too difficult to set up credit cards with low recurring transactions and auto-pay them every month to build your payment history factor. Make sure to see my other video on payment history for more information on how to do this with minimal effort. So where are you at with payments? Does every card you have get used every month? Let me know in the comments anytime. Hit it, Steve.